when somebody is young, I would never expect them to know stuff. It's impossible. How? How are you supposed to live 10 years more in your 20 years? It's the chance of that is, and also I don't think it's fair for someone to be 20 and have more experience than somebody in your 30s. Just that's not the way life works. How courageous you are and how willing you are to take risks is directly related with how many lessons you're probably going to learn in the next 10 years. So if you can take this risk, especially if I can see that you are not reckless, that you have care, and the fact that you're embarrassed is a good thing. If you're not, then you're probably just stupid and you don't even know the risk. But courage is not the absence of fear, right? So it's okay to show that tremor in your voice, in a bit of nervousness when you speak, but still go out and take the courage, take the risk anyways. I see that as the only thing you can offer in your 20s. Maybe there's a little bit of skill in your particular field, but that's not what I will be betting on if I'm investing money or if I'm hiring a young person. If you're young, you don't have experience on your side, so I'm hiring potential in one way or another.
What is up, guys? Today's conversation is going to be around the many lessons that Wayne wished he'd learned in his 20s. For context, Wayne started his first business when he was 22 years old. As you could probably imagine, a 20-something-year-old getting into business that young is going to encounter a lot of mistakes, a lot of lessons, and a lot of things learnt along the way. So we know this is going to be an incredibly valuable video for you guys. Whatever walk of life you found yourself, wherever you are today, I promise you will gain something out of this video. Wayne has now been in business for well over a decade. He now manages a team of over 40 people and operates $1 million per year business. We really hope you enjoy this one, guys. If you do, we'd really appreciate if you could share your thoughts down in the comments and drop a like on this video, as it helps us out so much. So without further ado, let's jump right in. But being young and ignorant is an advantage, which is probably very counter to what a lot of people think. Being young, you know, you're looked down upon, you're judged for your age, your inexperience. But you see it as an advantage. Why is that?
100%. Like, I don't know if we're going to put what I just said before in there, but I mentioned that when I go to sign a lease, for example, there's judgment on that I was young, or there's a lot of humiliating moments because when you're young, you can get away with it.
Yeah, right.
So you can use those as actual lessons.
Yep.
So if I'm 36 now asking questions that I didn't know when I was 22.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be deemed as courageous. I would just be deemed as stupid.
Yeah.
So now
annoying and stuff and being like, why doesn't it know this already? Yeah.
Yes, it becomes, so what people don't understand is no one in their right mind. First of all, I don't think there are anybody truly successful in their 20s anyways. I mean, you can define success. Like if it's, I'm sure you can win the lottery and buy the right Bitcoin at the right time and make a lot of money, but I don't define that as success, right? Success is, well, to me, is the fulfillment of having achieved things that are difficult to you, that you wanted to achieve. And I just don't think in your 20s you have enough experience. I thought I did. So anybody that you're trying to impress that usually have a bit of leverage or power that you want to learn from or impress, they're usually in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So they're usually younger than me when I was in my 20s. And when I felt like that, if I try to impress them with experience and knowledge in my 20s, I'd fail anyways, miserably. So what I didn't know at the time is they were actually looking for courage, looking for the ability to own up to your mistakes. So it's like me, 36 now, looking at a 21-year-old, I do not expect them to know more industry knowledge or experience than me. I want them to come up to me and say that I'm the type that don't know how to do this, but I'll figure this out. So the character is a lot more important to people when you're in your 20s. And those embarrassing, humiliating moments are actually when you're learning lessons.
Yeah, you got to play to your advantages as well. That's the thing. Like, I think that's a well summed up point is if you come out and try to play the game that they're going to beat you at in terms of experience and being able to try show them, I suppose, not show off, but more so kind of give them reasons to give you the place, you're going to lose the game of experience, right? So you got to play to that. I am young. I've got youth. I've got energy. I've got pizzazz. I've got a bit of confidence. I've got some courage to make things happen. Because I think people really respect that when you're young and you're actually trying to get after something. I think the people that appreciate it the most are the older ones, because they don't want you to guide them. They want to see someone or see themselves in you as well. Like these people are looking for evidence and being like, okay, wow, I remember being 20. I remember being 21 and having a dream and having a goal, and I made it happen. Why don't I give this guy a shot? He's convincing enough. For me as well, I feel like being young, even just having time on your side is super important. And it's the times to make mistakes as well. It's a time where you can get away with it. Not even just from the judgment of others, but just because you have a little bit more room to maneuver around making a mistake. Maybe started up the wrong business, or maybe you started up the wrong, whatever it is, you got into the wrong job, studied the wrong thing. There's times on your side. So you can just keep going. You can just keep going. Do you think that ignorance continues on as you get older? Do you need to like get over it? At what stage is it like ignorance is not seen as courageous, but now seen as, I suppose, a lack of experience?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'll still be ignorant comparing me to a more experienced 50, 60-year-old business person that's done all their life. To some people, I'll still be ignorant, but it's more so that you're just, I guess, in traditional brick and mortar business, it's a bit of a rare sight to see you in your 20s doing this. But when you're in your 30s and 40s, it's a bit more of a normality.
Yeah, right.
So you have a little less to explain because you look more like people sort of attack what they don't know all the time.
Okay, yeah.
So when I'm younger, I just stood out. And in the world of business, I liked lifting weights. And honestly, the way I present myself doesn't help. Like I'm not the biggest bodybuilder, but when you go into like, negotiate like a real estate lease or something, and the age, the gym sort of persona
Appearance
never played to my advantage with these traditional people that are like 20 years older than me.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize at the time was I accidentally played to my advantage. So one of the cases was I was trying to win this big real estate commercial building to start one of our gyms, because when you have a good commercial spot, the landlord has a lot of leverage. They have a lot of people apply for this. So I was up against with a lot of other people, and I would appeal to the landlord. The landlord are asking me, so what if you can't pay your expenses, what are you going to do? And my answer, I can't remember how I answered this, but I must have impressed him with my answer. I said, I've done my business for 10 years now. I started with nothing. So things are going to break. When it breaks, I would know how to fix it because I built it.
Right, yeah.
And little did I know, years later, this old landlord told me that that's why he wanted to give me that, the lease.
Yep.
Because apparently one of the competitors that was occupying that space, also he asked the same question.
Yeah.
And his answer was, my dad will give me the money.
Get wide more money.
Yeah. So his answer was like, because he was also a young fella.
Yeah.
And he said, my dad, don't worry, my dad is really rich, will wire me the money. And this 70-something business person straight away knew that wasn't, that I don't want, like, because when you sign a commercial lease, it's like over 10 years. It's a really long relationship. So, he told me afterwards, and I realized, oh my God, I was so just honest. So I don't know how to answer these questions. This is my big business venture. I've never done anything like this before.
Yep.
But I'll figure it out because I've built something. I've got this. If I try to impress him with answers that I think are true, he'll probably see that's fake.
Yeah.
So that was the advantage. So you can actually play into this. But if I was to do this again in my now 10 years later, I'd probably have to come up with a little bit more reason as to how I was going to do this.
Yeah, of course.
And I do have a bit more
proof and whatnot. Yeah.
Yes.
Instead of just, I suppose, ballsiness.
Yeah.
Just being laying it all out there, being like, yeah, this is the case. This is the situation.
Yeah.
Because obviously, okay, you hear that, you go like, oh, sweet. Oh, no matter what happens, I'll get paid as a landlord. But a lot of the people, I feel like they're looking for people to bet on, right? To give an opportunity a lot of the time, not to just, I don't know, get someone in and receive rent every month. I'm sure that's a very large driver of it, and that's probably priority number one. But if you can do that whilst giving someone that you like and appreciate a shot, then that's awesome. That's probably something they want to tick off as well. Do you feel like it comes down to communication and empathy and just being able to kind of read the people and kind of understand, or was that just pure dumb luck that you got that done?
No, I think that you do have emotional intelligence is probably a huge part of that. You got to be able to read the room. They're like
100%.
basic skills that you have to have. You have to try your best. You can't be stupid. Stupid meaning that pretending, just pretending like, oh, he'll give me the lease. You can't, you have to go in understanding the situation.
Yeah, 100%.
Understanding where you're short of, what are your advantage, what are you not. I just didn't know how much of an advantage being young and courageous would play on my side. As you get a little older, you have more resources, you have more to lose, and therefore your courageousness could be seen at an older age as a bit reckless.
Yeah.
Right. But at the younger age, you get arrested for speeding. It's a lot easier on your reputation than if you get that done at like 60.
Yeah. That's so true. That is so true.
So it's the same thing. So you can get away with a lot more mistakes. I think more experienced people will just look at how you respond to those versus when you get older, you get judged a bit more on what the mistakes actually were. So while you're in your 20s, you still have this opportunity. If you miss out on making those mistakes, I think you're missing out a lot of real lessons to learn. And then when you're in your 30s and 40s, you don't have as much leeway to ask for forgiveness for those mistakes.
Got you, yeah. So in terms of being young at the moment, so let's say young could be even up to, 25, even towards the ages of 30. What advice would you give to someone who's afraid of being seen as young and ignorant, afraid of asking the wrong question, afraid of starting up that venture because they feel like they are too young and inexperienced? What advice would you have to someone who's stuck in that?
I tell them that is exactly, so they're not going out there to take this risk because they're afraid to look stupid, essentially, right? Because they think that, I'm going to be embarrassed. Okay. But the actual embarrassing thing is them not taking that risk.
Right.
Because to somebody like me, I'd expect them to not take that risk because that's much more of a normal thought. Everybody's timid, but no one's ever admired a timid person. It's actually that courage that I see in a young person. Because I know in my hiring, when somebody's young, I would never expect them to know stuff. It's impossible. How? How are you supposed to live 10 years more in your 20 years? It's the chance of that is, and also I don't think it's fair for someone to be 20 and have more experience than somebody in your 30s. Just that's not the way life works. But I can assess your ability to learn in the next 10 years. So how courageous you are and how willing you are to take risks is directly related with how many lessons you're probably going to learn in the next 10 years. So if you can take this risk, especially if I can see that you are not reckless, that you have care, and the fact that you're embarrassed is a good thing. If you're not, then you're probably just stupid and you don't even know the risk.
Yeah.
But courage is not the absence of fear, right? So it's okay to show that tremor in your voice, in a bit of nervousness when you speak, but still go out and take the courage, take the risk anyways. I see that as the only thing you can offer in your 20s. Maybe there's a little bit of skill in your particular field, but that's not what I will be betting on if I'm investing money or if I'm hiring a young person. It's in your ability. If you're young, you don't have experience on your side, so I'm hiring potential in one way or another.
So it's seeing value in being young. It's seeing, because you could either look at it two ways. You could look at it as inexperience and a detriment, or you could see the advantage and play to that advantage, which is, it's something more young people need to get around.
It's understanding they're not being judged on the stick of experience. They're actually being judged on the stick of like risk-taking and courage and how you respond to mistakes.
Yeah.
So if you don't take that, you're essentially failing that assessment from somebody that are actually judging you, right?
Yeah.
So the fear of that judgment, I think if you look at it that way, then there's nothing to be embarrassed at because nobody cares how much you know, how much you don't know at that age.
Yeah. Play your cards. That's the cards you were given as a young person.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame for people who are young to kind of be very risk adverse or be very afraid of asking their own questions or putting themselves out there, because this is the time they need to. That is the best time to. Like you said, when you get a bit older, it's much trickier. So for anyone watching this who is playing on that kind of more timid side and thinking that you're young and inexperienced is a disadvantage, find the advantages, and I promise you now's the time to do so. Don't wait. Yep. But in that sense, so you now manage, we were talking before, but you manage a lot of people that who are around the same age as you were when you started the gym. And you were saying before, you were like, how can I realistically expect these people to kind of do the things that you're doing now because when you were the same age, you didn't have too much of an idea of what was going on. Which kind of relates to don't try to reason someone out of something they aren't reasoned to do. Does that apply in your view of that statement?
Yeah, it sort of links with this. So when I say that, do not reason someone out of something they didn't reason to do in the first place, is at times I find myself now being a bit older than someone that I'm trying to guide and trying to mentor. For example, don't go and do things this way, right? Don't do it this way. You're going to fail. You're going to make a mistake. So save yourself the effort and do it the way that I'm suggesting. They might agree with you verbally, but the motivation is generally isn't made rationally. If I might say a young manager that is making the first hire, I might suggest to look for certain traits, and I might suggest to say that don't hire this person simply because that you like them. Okay. All I can do is say this, and if they were going to go hire them anyways, even though they don't tick these boxes, but because they like them, then that's where this applies. Because they aren't reasoned to do it. They know the reason. I just told them the reason. They want to test themselves out. There is an emotional reason as to why they want to go and do something.
Got you.
And this is where I linked with before, that you simply cannot just inject 10 years of experience to a 20-year-old. It's unfair. You went through this as a 30-year-old because you went through what they've went through. You got to let them go through this. And there's a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction in going through and fixing your mistakes as well. So I've just learned to understand as I've aged that I've been disappointed quite a few times on what I thought was a lack of maturity for a lot of these younger kids. But really what it was is my unrealistic expectations.
Got you. You're right.
Because in my 20s, I had to make these mistakes to know. So how do I expect them not to? Now, I do think that with the right people, mentorship processes, you can speed that up so they don't have to spend as much time on the ground trying to get back up. You can maybe help them and maybe make the mistake just once, not like 5 times like I would.
Got you.
But it's just futile trying to stop someone. I think this will apply to parents with kids a lot, right?
Yeah.
Just let them do it. Yeah. And actually, it makes them more want to do it if you're trying to stop them.
Yeah, it's kind of like the saying, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yeah. That type of thing.
Yeah.
And people, you can rarely change someone. They have to, like, something has to click in their own head. Yeah. Like, you can give them all the reasons why they shouldn't do something or should do something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, they'll do whatever the hell they were going to do anyway a lot of the time, and they'll have to learn the lessons. So I feel like the takeaway here is to not get caught up in the actions of others, so to speak. You just kind of watch as more of an observer and just see what happens, and then you focus on what you're doing and what you're controlling. Yeah. And just, does this apply to young people or does this apply to anyone? Do you think people grow out of that and start to become more reasonable, or are people kind of more at the whims of their emotions a lot of the time?
I think when people, I think it applies to people that are younger than you, however you are. Yeah. Right?
Because then you're taking on the mentor role. Yeah, got you.
Yeah. But maybe like more so in people in their 20s. That's because that's when you're out there to experience. Actually, this links with the other one, because they're supposed to be making dumb mistakes in their 20s. Why would you stop them? Yeah. You're right. So with the point, it's just don't take it personally. Just because someone doesn't listen to you doesn't mean they don't respect you.
So you don't scold them afterwards. You don't be like, I told you not to do that. Or
it just creates resentment.
Yeah.
I used to. I used to be like, I've gave this person so many chances.
Yeah.
How could that? I've done everything I can, and not realizing that it's never been about me.
Got you.
It's been about this person's journey to learn. If they want to do this, what's your definition of right, anyways? I mean, what do they say? Like a knowledge is poor substitute for an experience, right? So they want to experience it. Just kind of move out of the way, and if you're not the right person for the job, then they're not. And this can apply in a personal case. If they're not the right life partner for you, then they're not at that stage. If if this friend you're trying to help, it's not listening, then they're just not ready. And their story looks a bit different to yours. I think if you look at it more objectively, if you're trying to help this person and it's not about you getting that moral high ground, then just help them. And then sometimes they just want the support of going through something and you being there to listen, or you being there just to not say, I told you so. Just let them do it. And when they fall down, I guess they'll ask you.
Got you.
So I was, so that thing is to remind myself that, you say something once or twice. If people don't take your advice, that's okay. It's not your advice. They just have to go through something at that stage of their life.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, it is always interesting though that down the line, maybe they then kind of realize that was the right advice and then start doing it. And then again, you can't be like, oh, I told you so. It's good that you're doing that now. but they do. And but people just have to work these things out for themselves a lot of the time. You can't control anyone. People are just going to do what they do, and you just have to observe, focus on yourself.
I'm sure like we've all done this. I've done this. I remember like when in my 18 or 19, I wanted to do this. I did this MLM marketing, network marketing business, and all my family people like, don't do this. You shouldn't do this. And I just wasn't having it. I just had to do it. But to be honest, I learned a lot from it too. I don't do it. I probably did it for like 2 or 3 years maybe. And then afterwards, I learned a lot of lessons from it. Now I get it. But then they weren't seeing the lessons that I was going to learn. And my life was different, that my parents or my family that was giving me this advice, they have gone through the traditional, academic studies route. And I didn't go through that route. And I had certain lessons that I had to learn. So I didn't have the same frame as them. So that lesson didn't really apply to me. And I think they understood anyways. I went and did what I had to do. So now I just think back at the age when I was doing these things. Of course, people are going to go through that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's partially similar to me. I just realized that probably one of the best things my parents ever did was just to let me make mistakes, my own mistakes, and then figure it out for myself. I feel like, the helicopter parents, they're kind of, not that I'm giving parenting advice. I know it's very difficult, but it just seems like, especially in terms of your personal relationships or work relationships, if you just let people kind of figure it out and offer some guidance here and there, but just don't be overly controlling or that type of stuff, then they'll figure it out. They'll learn the lessons a lot better, and then they'll trust you as well. There'll be that connection there. In that note, I think something that kind of relates to this is that people never work for you; they work for themselves. Yeah.
Yep.
Why did you want to learn that in your 20s? Why have you now figured it out now?
Okay, so what I learned by this lesson was that once I created a business that was enough to hire some people, and as a young in my late 20s now, I thought my job was over. It was finished. It was like, this is where the good time starts. This is where I start to make some money and just pay other people to do stuff for you, right? This is what a lot of people think business is.
Got you.
Until the employees or the team members or the people that you rely on most quit on you. Then you ask yourself, why? Well, then I understood that there was no cathedral for them to build. They saw this as a job. I saw this as my purpose. Of course, they're not going to work for me. So that is a reminder that as a leader, I think that if you hire anybody or if you have anybody work for you, if you're influencing people, you're a leader of some sort. If you want to continue to be able to influence them and lead them, the only way to do it is to combine their definition of success with yours, or at least be able to fit their definition of success within yours. So my single gym that I had with 40 hours of shifts that I could give to my manager simply wasn't enough to keep them, right? So how could you do this? You have to. So that's when I realized, this is why companies grow. So this is not because of just out of pure greediness that a founder grows the company. I'm growing it so I can create more people like me and create more purpose and fulfillment, and then they can create more for the other people. Essentially, it's never been about you. So when I realized that, then my goal for growing the business was no longer serving the customers, or at least no longer just serving the customers, because that's also everyone else's job in the business, right? My goal as a leader became creating a dream and delivering the mission of the people that work for me. So I understand very well what my team members' personal goals are, whether it be buying a house in what suburb, but whether it be what car they want or at what age do they want to get married and have kids, I would find out as much personal stuff as they're comfortable sharing. Do they want to be a part of the business? Do they want to hold stocks of the business? Do they want to open their own gym? And if I like this person, stinginess just doesn't apply in this case. If people ask the question, imagine if I just had 2 of me, how much could I accomplish? Well, you can only create 2 of them if you also give them what you have. So then when I realized this, it changed everything. So then I asked the question, instead of saying, how do I get them to work for me? I go, well, how do I get them to want to work for me? So then that's when we started to expand. I started to open up equity options for other staff members so they can own it. And I started to give away ownership, not just physical ownership of the business. It's also ownership of tasks, decisions. They have to have some sort of fulfillment. They have to have some sort of, they got to be changing some lives, or they got to be, ticking some significant boxes to want to stay here with me. So yeah, that's what I mean by to understand. No one's going to work for you for a very long time. If they're working for you, unless they're your family, they're only working for the wage or whatever that you're providing them. If that's the only sort of exchange, that's going to be very short-lived. So it's for people that influence and lead anybody. Are you giving them, is your mission also their mission? If so, then I think this can be a collaboration partnership. So I think anything long-term becomes partnership. It's never really employee-employee relationship.
Yep.
This is how I treat pretty much all our team members. Potentially all my future business partners.
Yeah, no, it's a very, I think it's a uncommon, very good way to look at things, especially if you're a leadership of a leader of a company that's looking to grow. It's about nurturing. I suppose what you nurture grows as well. So if you look at members of the team or whoever it is, friends or associates, as I suppose individuals who are trying to, make their path for themselves and find their way, you need to be nurturing that. You need to be looking at that way. How can you serve them? I think that's really powerful. I wonder, do you have any ideas of how this can be kind of flipped and applied? Because obviously as a business owner and a leader, it's really, you can look at it that way quite simply, that you need to flip your script from being like, okay, this is just the members are getting along, the employees are going to keep working. They're not going to ever, be like, actually, I want to do this, or this isn't where I want to be, or whatever. You have to read them almost and be like, this is how I can make them happy, so to speak. If you flip that and you're like just someone who's early 20s, if you were early 20s, even before you started the gym, do you think this still applies? Like how can you see this applying?
I think you'd reverse it and think that for yourself.
Okay.
So you'd reverse it and think that if they're in their 20s, I reckon a lot of people will be like, oh, I hate my boss, or I don't like my job. I don't like this and that. Well, you don't like it because you feel like you're working for him. There is nothing in it for you other than the paycheck. And if that's the only thing, then it's going to be somebody else that pays you more. Right? So it's going to be not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you leave. Right. And again and again and again. But it's different when you believe that you are making a difference to this world. You do it for free, or you enjoy it, or whatever it is that is ticking your box.
Got you.
So I would say to reverse that, if you're in a position to lead people at the moment, and if you're in your early 20s or even under 20, you probably aren't in a position, maybe in sports, maybe in little teams, if you're fortunate enough to be in a position to lead, great, but most people probably aren't in a position to lead other people until you're sort of well into your 20s, maybe 30s. Right?
Yeah.
So if you're a team member at that point, I guess understand that your team leaders may not always be doing the best jobs and they may not know this concept, but perhaps help them. So you would proactively go to them. If I was take it back to under 20s when I was working in my corporate job, and it becomes a lot harder if there's a big corporation with a big corporate job, there's a lot of people in there, right? It doesn't always have to be ownership of the company. And to be honest, when I was in my early 20s, I worked for like a Fortune 500 company. And for me to have a piece of the company is ridiculous at 20 to even think about that. So what I should have done is I would go to my bosses or whoever makes the call and I say, listen, I really appreciate getting all of these tasks and stuff that you signed me to do, but I would really like to be involved with some projects that would bring strategic growth to whatever our mission is, okay? And I don't want to be paid extra for this. I just want to be involved in this to show you that I can make a difference. So that's when you sort of start to focus on what you can give. And what you realize is once you start to work on important stuff and that challenges you, not only that you eventually get paid more as a result, you are needed. The team really needs you. And that is very satisfying to know that you're being utilized, you know?
Yep.
And I honestly don't know that a person that is so needed for their whole lives, that add so much value, that don't eventually get paid well.
Right.
Well, even if that was the case, then that would be a great problem to have because there'll be so many people bidding for you.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So I don't think that is the problem. The problem of you is the problem of what value are you adding? And I think if you add a lot of value, that solves a lot of fulfillment questions. So as a young team member, if I know that I can make a difference, I remember thinking back to those days and working in the office, the biggest fulfilling days were actually the days that I worked the hardest. I stayed behind to 7 p.m. when a supplier was dropping off some products late and I had to stay behind to receive them. And I was only one in the office. I felt so like I'm needed. You know, I did something and that's very satisfying.
100%.
So I just wish that they gave me more of these opportunities. But I also understand that now that I was young and they didn't know if they were putting too much on me or whether I liked it, I should have probably been more proactive to go in there and be like, just get myself in with the big boys, you know, not asking for more. So I think, for the younger people in the 20s, perhaps reverse it. You will eventually be in a position to lead and that's how you would lead. But before you get there, maybe help the people that are leading you do a better job at leading you.
Yeah, right. Because how better understand leadership than being someone who's being led, right? You look at it from that perspective and go, if at one stage I am going to be in a leadership position, that's what I want to work towards. Right now I'm not. Let's see, how am I thinking? Like as the person who's being led or whatever in the team, what are my wants and needs? What do I want out of this? Yeah. And then you kind of reverse engineer, so to speak.
Yeah.
You figure out how to make their lives a bit easier, the leaders, and then you figure out how to make your life a bit easier. And then if you never get reciprocated in terms of reward, or they never kind of notice it and give you the pathway to get you where you want to go, like you said, there's probably going to be a bidding war over your value. So yeah, you flip the script and you just focus on, until I'm there, how can I build myself up to have as much value and as much input? And then when I'm there, it's going to be like a very easy crossover.
Yeah.
And then you also realize from what you've learned and paying attention and experience that now you know how to lead because you were in those people's shoes. Yeah, that's powerful. That's a really good way to flip that script and figure it out. Okay, moving on. It will always take longer and cost more than you think.
Yeah, this is a simple one.
It is quite simple, but I think this is all about patience, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can go practical with this or philosophical with this.
Yeah.
I mean, I just get some, anyone that's renovated a house would agree with this. Okay, so we can go as simple as that.
Basically anything. Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And we have the most, I don't remember anything that is a big enough project or a goal or something worthwhile that ended up being, that was easier than I thought. Maybe
and on time and
I can't think of one. There might have been one or two times. I probably consider that really lucky. But so I guess that's like just a preparation. Like when you go in there with rose-colored glasses on, it's a bit hard to see the red flags, you know. So I now know that, you know, if I'm expecting to start a business, and so when we got into business, I was very upfront with guys, don't expect to cash any profits in the first 3 years. Like this is going to take a long time. Turns out it was actually quicker than that. And we go, this was.
So then it's better than thinking it's going to go faster and then taking a lot longer.
So I will set the expectation very hard in the beginning.
Yep.
And I also sort of apply this at times hiring young team members. And back then I think we did a lot of hiring, trying to convince them to take the job. We'll have a great workplace. We work hard and play hard. We have a great community. But then I just feel like that people cave in at the first moment when they realize this is work, you know? So now I'd say that, well, look, training that has very high standards. Our workplace has very high standards and is probably going to feel very tough. You're going to feel, I'll tell them the stuff that aren't good. And what you realize is people actually then are more willing to commit to some. People don't necessarily want something easy. So then that's actually not only it sets them up, set the expectations right, and all the good that comes later on that which they will see are going to be better received because they are expecting to commit to something. It's just mostly setting the expectations right.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah, so over 15, I don't know how many, 13 years in doing business. Yeah, whatever the budget is, just put a bit more in there. Whatever the time frame you're giving yourself, if you knock down a house and rebuilding it, give it an extra year. And have the expectation to push just as hard.
Yeah.
But understanding that it probably will blow out.
Yeah. There's a fine balance of navigating that then, of kind of having the sense of urgency, but then also trying your damn best to kind of set realistic expectations.
Yeah, I definitely don't
hoping
mean
you get there a bit quicker, right?
Yeah, I definitely don't mean to take out the urgency. Like that's
yeah.
The urgency's got to be there. Otherwise, it'll take 3 times as long.
Yeah. But even then, if you're working with gusto and some urgency, it still will probably take a while. Like for example, people that leave university, get university degrees, they could be applying to 15 jobs every day and probably still not get a job for 6 months or something, even though they think it might happen in a month.
Yes.
Yeah. So just having patience and knowing that it will happen eventually, but probably not as quick as you think.
Yeah, I think the point is here to forget the short term. You're not playing for the short term.
Exactly.
Just because it's going to take long anyways.
Yep.
The time's going to pass. Just go and commit to a long-term goal. And I'm just thinking back then, remember the pandemic? We thought it was going to go on for like 5 weeks.
Oh yeah, that took forever.
So if we're playing for 5 weeks, I mean, we'd be depressed.
Everyone had such everyone was really keen to like sort it all out. When it was all flying around, everyone's like, yeah, no, we got to stay safe, guys. I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. And then a couple of weeks later, they're like, no, screw this, guys. Let's get out. This lockdown thing's not working. It's 2 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone was so keen when they thought it was going to be a short time. Yeah. So commit. Whatever you commit to, just be ready to roll. I think I tell everyone that all the time. Like, do not expect any reasonable results if you're getting into, I suppose, some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor. Don't expect any reasonable results in the short future.
Yeah.
Like, and that's saying like a year. A year's really short.
Very short.
Even then, don't expect. If it comes within a year, great. That's like count your lucky stars. But think longer term visions and just keep chipping away at it.
And this particularly applies especially for young people. I actually think that it's like if you're 60 and you want a 2-3 year return, I actually think that's quite acceptable. One is because you have a lot of resources and you don't have much life left, and you also have a lot of lessons already and you have more leverage. But the funny thing is, like when people are 50, 60, they actually understand things do take longer. So they if they're successful by that age, they play for the long term. But it's actually when people in their 20s, they don't understand this. Everything is a year or 2 years or 3 years. You know? But the point is you should aim to want to be successful in 10 years time. So then whether you become successful in a year or 2 or 3 becomes kind of irrelevant if the goal is to play for 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah. Still a fine kind of balancing beam act of kind of risk to being young and being willing to take risks, but also having the calculations and the patience enough to be controlled and not kind of like, I think it was Facebook's motto was like move fast and break things or something like that. Like, yeah, you want to go quick, but you want to go like patient and control at the same time. You can't get like too ahead of yourselves and hope it all, is finished in a few weeks. It's not going to work out like that.
Yeah, no, I hope people don't take this as in like move slow. That's not what we're saying. Like, I don't think anybody can be successful just moving very slowly.
Yeah.
But it's the moving fast, failing fast, but going from failure to failure without losing any enthusiasm.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but it looks damn good. And I'm sure they kept working on it every day.
That's the example.
Yeah.
That's the example that, I don't know where I read this. Building the cathedral is that, the Taj Mahal.
Oh, yeah.
In India. That took how many generations, 2 or 3 generations to build, 140 years. It was more than a person's lifetime.
Yeah,
and the building.
Unreal.
So the question they were asking, I don't know what book this was, but the question was asking, like, can you imagine getting these workers to build this to the quality that you want it done, knowing that at the end of their life, they can't even see the finished product. So what is the purpose other than money of them building this?
Yeah.
So then they were saying like, you've got it. So I think what they've done is they told the workers how beautiful this thing would be. You're walking towards something that's so great, right? So you were serving great purpose.
It's going to be further past you. You're going to live on with this structure that you helped build. Type of thing. Yeah.
Which it did.
Yeah.
So that's like the same thing with, from a leadership perspective, like if something's going to take long, especially if it's going to take long, you better make sure that
there's motivations.
There's people are, there's something that they're working for.
Grander vision, like not just monetary or not just because if everything's monetary, that can be solved by finding another job.
Yeah.
It's getting them excited about the outcome.
Yes.
The outcome. What's the North Star, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then everything else is kind of fuel getting them to that North Star. Yeah. I remember seeing that in because we were recent in Florence. There's a giant cathedral. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. But it's beautiful. It's unbelievable. Like nothing I've ever seen. I don't know how they built it. It was built in like 100 AD or something like that.
Oh, really? Okay.
And yeah, it took the average lifespan then was like 45 and it took something like 112 years to build.
Wow.
So 2 full generations would have gone through without seeing it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking like, damn, that's crazy.
I think there's also like say our current day and age. Imagine like who's gonna want to do that? It's instant gratification we're living in now. 100%. So I guess it's a good advice for people, just to, or not an advice, but a reminder for people that Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
So why do we expect everything else to be built in a day now?
Exactly. It's harder now more than ever, but it's probably more important now than ever. So something to keep in mind. Remind yourself daily. Most events rarely happen once.
Okay. Okay. So this is one, I think there's probably 2 ways to look at this. One way is a huge part of my job is leading and managing people. So it's always about people. But also this can apply, I guess, in everything. And what I mean by this is simply, if you're trying to understand someone's behavior for the future, it's quite simply just look at their past. And I have this theory that things will repeat itself constantly or in similar ways unless there is a disruptance of that cycle.
Okay. Right.
So if I was to put this practically as from a leader perspective, maybe I'll reverse it later, but from a manager perspective, that if you're hiring someone, a young kid who makes a particular mistake, that you see a red flag, don't ignore the red flag, because it will. When there's smoke, there's fire. And there's so many ways you can say this. If there's a gun hanging on the wall in chapter 1, it's going to be fired in chapter 2. There's always something that leads up to this.
Right.
So I've never had a time where I saw somebody do something that I go, oh, perhaps don't worry about that. Perhaps it's nothing. It's always something. Unless something significant happened in this person's life that changed the trajectory of where they're going. And they might go through a breakup. They might have had a family thing happen. They might have learned a lesson that changed this routine. Otherwise, we'll continue this cycle. So if you look at, it works good and bad, right? So if you look at somebody's work history, if in the interview process, they'd focus on what's happened to them over what they did, you will likely be the next thing that happened to them.
Got you, right. Okay.
So if somebody goes that my old boss was really bad to me and this is the reason why I quit there, you will probably be that next bad boss. And if they were to say that I didn't make my promotion because they discriminated me, you will most likely then discriminate them. Not because you did, but they will take it that way. But if they say, look, I really could have done better at this job and I didn't rock up on time, maybe they would have then learned that lesson. Or if they had a lot of success, if they were, for example, you might have no work experience, but you might have did sports and became an Olympian. So you can, if all things being equal, you can expect that similar kind of achievement to reoccur again.
Got you, right.
Right? Because they've done it before, unless something significant changes that. So I always tell myself this to take the emotion out of stuff. I'm a quite emotional person. So if I see, I always like to forgive people. I think a lot of people can agree, like it's friends, families, you forgive them because you think that this is that one-time thing, but ask yourself how many times this has happened.
Yep.
And if nothing's really changed in their lives, you will likely be back in that position, whatever the situation is, whether it be, I'm not giving relationship advice, but once a cheater, always a cheater. I mean, it might not always be the case. Again, something has to change that trajectory, but if nothing changed, probably going to happen again. People say this thing about domestic violence. People say this thing about like alcoholism.
Yeah. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Yeah.
So I'll just be very rational on looking at the situation. Like, this person keeps on doing this. Chances are they're going to do this again. So do I want to be a part of that? It's pretty as simple as this.
Yeah. So see the writing on the wall type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. even flipping that, well, you mentioned for relationship advice or even friendships.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting taken advantage of or whatever is going on, it's probably going to keep occurring.
Yeah.
Until, like you said, unless something changes. But looking at it from the employeeship, if you're like in a situation where your boss is continuously not kind of, they're shutting you out, not giving you promotions, it's just going to probably keep happening. They've realized that they can do it. So at that stage, you got to read the writing on the wall and find a different circumstance where you're appreciated and everything else. But that's a good one. It's kind of like history rhymes. Like I feel like things keep happening until something changes. There has to be like it's a little bit like what we were talking about before as well. People, you can't really get anyone to change either. Like something has to click. Like they have to read something or that they finally like unlock something in their brain or they see something or something happens. I know a lot of people have like epiphanies when near-death experiences and this type of stuff. So but that's a really good one.
I'll give you like a very practical example, and I'll try and give this example in both ways.
Yeah.
Being the employee and being the manager. Like if you have a young kid that's always late to work or late to sup, they're always going to be late, probably until you fire them. Then they will learn the lesson. And then they won't be late for the next job. So you stop the cycle. I'm not telling people that you fire them. You're giving that as an example of something happened.
Yeah, right.
But if you forgive them all the time, how are they supposed to learn this?
That's like, is it whatever you're, putting up with? It's like, if you, I can't remember the exact same, but basically if you put up with it, it's going to keep happening.
If something,
like you have to put your foot down.
Yeah. So if what is it? If a drop in standard is being accepted, that becomes a new standard.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There's many ways you can say this.
No, it's a good way to say it.
But essentially it's, as an employee though, understand that if nothing changes, you will continuously be late. So if you don't want to be fired for being late, you better change something. So in other words, you better, if there's something in your life that is just making you too busy, you better get rid of that. Or you better do something that unless then the change is going to be done upon you.
Yeah, right.
So this is where I sort of see, like if something has always happened, then I look for stuff like, okay, if I like this pattern, that's a positive. If I don't like this pattern, let me see if there's anything else that suggests that this may have been changed.
Got you. Right.
So if something happens again and again at a workplace, or a friend says the same thing again and again that bothers me, I just have to decide either I live with it or I'm going to have to do something about this.
No, it's a good one. It's a powerful one. Because, like you said, the amount of people that get stuck in these cycles, like domestic violence as well, is so bad.
Yeah.
And they just, he'll change or I can change him. That's like the very typical trope. But if it's happened before, it's likely to happen again. Yeah, so always keep that in mind. On that note, don't let your team or friend do anything that makes you dislike them.
100%. I'm like, so for this.
This is a little bit like the standards. A drop in standards becomes a standard. Yeah,
100%. This is probably the reason why it's very difficult to be my friend, and especially, if somebody has very high standards and they voice all the stuff they're not happy with, it's going to be very abrasive to hang around with this person unless you have the same standards. But I think, what's the alternative? The alternative is to not say anything, then you'll resent them or you probably don't respect them very much. Yeah, and then therefore you're probably not their friend and you probably don't care for them that much. And then it becomes like artificial harmony.
Yeah.
So I just think in this workplace environment where if as a team member, we have this question that we ask all the time, is there a full trust and openness in the team? We have to always, tick 5 there. And if there's something I don't like about the team, or if something that some person did I don't like about them that I simply I resent. Yep. Unfortunately, I can't work with them because there is that little barrier that I don't understand why you did this. So what I mean is, if you're in charge of this team member, don't let them do it, because if they did it, long-term wise, they're probably going to be off your team anyway. So you may as well just have that conversation with them then. Yep. But from a friend perspective, if you let a friend do something that they didn't like without voicing your full concerns, they're probably not going to be your friend in a very long time. So then I think if that's a possibility, then you let that happen. You may as well just, for them not to be your friend for who you actually are, then not being your friend for what you try to hide. I mean, you may as well stick to your truth, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's I always essentially just don't put up with things without voicing your put your standards there. Definitely voice what your concerns are to the people that you care about.
100%. Yeah. Well, that's like you said, false harmony. So if you are continuously biting your tongue or trying to like just play into things like certain standards or things that are going on and you don't think it's right for your life, but you continuously kind of drop and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to adapt myself. Then you're just around people that aren't even sure about who you are. Like you're not true to yourself, so you're not being true to them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation for both parties involved. But if you actually stick to your guns, and I think there's a way to go about doing it with some tact. Obviously, yeah, it is an abrasive thing to do, but I think there's a way to voice it without coming across as, I suppose, I don't know, like a dick maybe.
Yeah.
That's the way I'd put it maybe. But that's up to the individual to figure out.
I think that's something. I think the tact in doing that. Yeah, there's definitely a skill in doing that. And when I was younger, I've lost a lot of friends by being too abrasive. I definitely don't think honesty needs to be brutal. I think that's often like, oh, if it's honesty, it has to be being delivered in the most brutal way. No, I think that's just can be lack of empathy.
Yeah.
I think why wouldn't you make the words sound a bit better so they can be received better?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's something else. But definitely, as in, have the intent to voice these things so that you don't dislike them. At least you have to understand their perspective so that you don't dislike them. As soon as that little toxic cancer cell is there, it sort of spreads within that, and everything becomes this. And next time something happens that you don't quite like, you go, oh, it's because you see they've changed, or I'm putting up with this again.
Yeah,
so it's just something that's fair for anyone.
Yeah, so that's like relationships and everything else.
Yeah,
which is one of the last ones. Don't delay confrontation. Yeah, as well. So that is being quick on that as well. Don't letting it just simmer and grow and then explode, and then all of a sudden it's bad for everyone involved at that stage. So yeah, being quick on it is very important.
With the consideration of not being reckless, I guess.
Yeah.
But, given that
and overly abrasive. Yeah, it can't come out of anger though. It's coming out of empathy and just general appreciation for each other, I suppose. Because you're not doing it because you think they're a bad person or you think you're above them. You're coming at it because you don't want it to exacerbate and grow into something that it doesn't need to be. Yeah. That's what I would look at this from. I remember reading this. I don't know where. It was in a book or something. Or it was don't let a friend do anything that makes you dislike him. It actually might have been Jordan Peterson.
I think so.
I think it was Jordan Peterson now I think about it.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
I think it is in one of his 12 rules.
12 rules for life. Yeah.
Yeah, because it just I think it might actually now you mention it. I think it just clicked in my head where it was from. Yeah. So that's what I remember always thinking that's a good one. Yeah.
He also did say that confrontation delayed is confrontation multiplied. So if you don't like confrontation, you better do it now. It's just going to get worse. So I with this last point, look, we talked about it in one other episode where I have the rule of like, if it bothers you in 24 hours, take action in the next 2 to 4 hours. And that 24 hours is the, hey, calm down. I don't know, sometimes it doesn't take 24 hours. I mean, just maybe sleep on it. If you're that angry about it, you should probably just make sure you can actually deliver the message properly. Yeah. But if you can't sleep on it, okay, you definitely should say something. It's bothering you that much.
100%.
So I would, with like life partners, I never am able to sleep on stuff. Like I always, I can't go to sleep angry with somebody that I love because I'll wake up and then I will hate them more for this. So I better have the decency to even address this. We cannot sleep tonight, but at least even if we just get 2 hours of sleep, it's a good 2 hours instead of just thinking about this. Within reason, I try and do this as quickly as I can. And even the most trivial things, like some things can be very trivial. If I don't understand it, I would call the person and clarify this if I care about this person.
Final one. This is one I really like this one. This is kind of what I think someone explained this to me really young when I was like reading and realized like, because I feel like you could read 100 books and you could read one book but not feel like much change has happened. But you read 100 books, your life's going to be completely different. Reading or learning equals diamond mining. You're like looking for that little nugget that's going to, like I was mentioning before, I feel like people make radical changes on their own by receiving a certain piece of information, something was delivered in a certain way that just clicked. And it really unlocks something in their brain or their personalities or whatever it is. And that's what you're reading for. You're reading for those kind of changes, that piece of information that might, be applied to your personal life, your business life, your work life, whatever it is. They're there. And that's what you're looking for when you're reading.
Yep.
And when you find them, write them down. Make sure you note them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's for me. That's why you read.
Yeah, that thing, reading changed my life. It's one of those things where I don't want to go too much on about reading because it changed my life. Right? But a lot of people already have reading as a habit.
Yep.
And they probably need to know how to think for themselves more, of which that will change their life.
Yeah.
But if you're this like a stubborn type like me that don't like to take people's advice, that you think you know it all, you probably aren't a big fan of reading material that don't already align with your sort of thinking.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right. But that's for that advice is for those people. So it was during my lowest of times where the pandemic was happening and I had to sell my house to keep the business running, that I nothing to do at home. And I came across a piece of, it might have been a reel. I can't even remember where somebody said this, like, listen, you can read 1,000 pages. It might mean nothing, but it will take you 1,000 to find that one page that can change your life. And I don't mean just in books. It might be anything in
podcasts or
stuff, anything you learn, right? So then my mind was then open to, you know what, he has a point. So what he's saying is I might have to read 1,000 pages to make a difference instead of, because usually I read 2 pages and I'm like, this doesn't do anything. So then I sat down, I think I read 3 books, and maybe 3 or 4 books later, there was one or parts of that book that made me realize, oh, wow, like I needed this. And then I referenced down all the books that was referenced in that book, and then I went on the whole loop, and then, gee, my business changed after that. It like, I can't explain to you how much that changed things. And all it did was just start reading. For me, it was that simple, start learning.
Yep.
So I still don't like it. I still don't, because I'm not a very patient person. And sitting down sort of in a spot, just reading, it gets me like still antsy a bit.
Yeah.
But because of that, I make myself every day, I don't even read much. I tell myself, read with a goal of reading 10 pages. And I failed it this morning because I only read 1. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but it's like training. You know, sometimes you fail the reps that you said you're going to do, but it's okay. You just a habit.
It's about the consistency and the long term. Yeah.
Correct. So for the people that struggle to read like me, you probably are very stubborn and probably believe in yourself a lot. But in contrast, you probably also don't know what you don't know. So if you then pick up this habit, it would, whatever knowledge you have now would put a multiplier to that. But yeah, so the people that, some people might read all the time and don't expect the same effect because you're already doing all of that.
Yeah.
It might be something else. But yeah, this was something so trivial and so practical. But I reckon as a single piece of thing that I did change the most about my financial position, my business, my life, just in my adult age. This is the one thing that made the most difference.
100%. Yeah. I agree with that entirely. And similar to training or anything really, there's going to be books that resonate with you more so. And I think that's one way to get the ball rolling on the learning process. Or it doesn't have to be books. It could be podcasts or whatever it is. You hear or you read a piece of content that you think is well written and it matches the style. You get into it. You want to read, like you almost, you know, when you read a book and you almost can't stop. You're like, wow, this is actually like really interesting stuff. This is really exciting. That's the kind of book that I feel like really gets people started with it. They realize they kind of get it now. And then down the line, they're like, wow, okay, I retain that piece of information. And it's just things you don't really get from like TikTok, like or anything like this. When you're scrolling through, you see 100 videos, you might remember a fraction, like marginally you remember anything. Yeah. So it's the intention of sitting down and trying to learn something, trying to pick it up. Yes. That's the impact. And yeah, I always say this to people, one book's not going to make a difference, but 100 books will change your life. And it's a long-term process. It's not get 100 books done this month. It's just build the habit. And I promise you the learning process, you're going to find it coming up in your day-to-day life, your work life, you'll all of a sudden be like, okay, this is crazy. But if you don't become more, you can't really offer more or provide value to people. And that's one way to make it happen is the learning process.
Yeah. Honestly, this is, I can't go on about this enough. Like reading has seriously changed so much of my life. And I don't even, I think, I mean, people that, if people that are thinking, I will go a bit more tough on this and say that if you're just listening to podcasts in your car, that's not enough. I think it's not enough because People think, I just listen to a podcast when I'm running, when I'm walking in the gym, in the car. No, the whole point of this is to train your ability to go through 1,000 things that are useless to find the one that is useful, right? So if your whole sole reason of listening to the podcast over reading is because you can do this while you're doing something else, it means you're not sacrificing the time to look for that one diamond.
Got you.
Then that sort of, it's still better than nothing, obviously. But the point that I'm trying to say here is I also have listened to a lot of podcasts before I sat down and started reading. If you sit, I think if you just can't read, if you sit down, you just sit in the sun and put on a podcast and have your notes out on your phone, you take down notes when you hear a zinger, I think that's okay too, because you've taken that time out to just learn. It's almost like saying that, why can't you just buy a pair of dumbbells and just do curls while you're driving? I mean, technically, that's the same thing, isn't it? You could probably get the reps in. Yeah. But you don't get
that's like, I suppose, a good metaphor for that, or not a metaphor, but comparison. You know those like Bowflex ab machines that you're standing there and it's just shaking, it's vibrating your legs. Yeah, nothing's happening. You're not making any progress. So same thing, right?
Well, even if it is giving you a process.
You can't cheat it. You can't hack it. Yeah.
Well, you get cheated results.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's like you probably will do something, but it's nothing compared to what you would do if you just take that even 15 minutes out with the intent of training it. So I just think if it's like, come on, take 10 minutes out a day. Just listen to 10 minutes of a podcast and do nothing else. Or just read 10 pages. That's it. And then have the habit of, say, doing that for a year. Yeah. It's so different to you going on a run or a walk and listening to something. For me, like that changed everything.
Drop in and out. You're not really paying much of attention. Yeah.
How are you going to take notes? And you're missing half of it anyway. Yeah. you literally just churning them through without making a value out of it. And then somebody asks you, George, have you heard that podcast? Yeah, I heard it. Yeah. You heard it with 50% sort of intensity.
A good one.
Yeah. So I just think that's kind of wasteful. And meaning that when you're reading as well, it's not just to finish the book. It's actually, I take a very long time to read. I take down notes to actually getting the lesson out of it.
So that's a good action step for people. If you do listen to podcasts and you really enjoy them, just whenever you're listening to them, or take 10 minutes out of your day, maybe it's in the morning, and just sit down with a notepad and paper or use your phone, take some notes on it. Actually really listen and encapsulate what people are saying. And that will make much of a difference. But I agree with you. It's the intention and it's the training. It's just like growing a bicep. You have to be consistent on it, and you have to show up. You can't cheat it. You can't cheat push-ups. You got to do some push-ups. All right, it's awesome, guys. Take some action on that. Start reading today or learning, whatever it is, and have the intention. And we hope that if you're in your 20s, you can avoid a few of the mistakes and the lessons that we wish we knew.